I'm James Mireau. I'm 37 years old, from Edmonton, Alberta, and I have ulcerative colitis. Let's talk. Life before ulcerative colitis was pretty optimistic and hopeful in the sense that I was a young person and I thought of all of the things I was going to accomplish over the next 20 years. When I was first diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, my reaction was a combination of relief and then, I guess, a kind of disappointment. The relief was knowing that I at least had a clue as to what was going on, and that meant that I would now be able to choose medications or have some sort of grasp on what was happening to me. But the disappointment came from now having a label affixed to me, because to that point in my life I was just a quote-unquote normal person. Now I was someone with a disease. I didn't want people's pity, and I just didn't want anything that confirmed the fact that my life had changed. What followed was a period of time where the disease was in remission. As it turned out, it did come back, and that was in some ways harder to deal with than the first time because there was something final about it, but also that I began to understand that what I was dealing with was a chronic illness, that it was always going to return. I had to, in a strange way, forgive my body for doing what it did and just move on. Ulcerative colitis has taught me to think about my body as a sort of ecosystem where there's a delicate balance of a lot of different factors that needs to exist for me to maintain good health. So consistent use of medications is an important part of keeping that balance. I don't expect the medication to do it all for me, but I find that my daily decisions can definitely increase the effectiveness of the medications I take. After you've lived with the disease long enough, you know that for yourself there are certain foods, behaviors that are going to trigger a flare. I find that if I am on my way to a flare and I know things are going to get worse, if I think about that, it tends to accelerate the process. I get more upset about it, the symptoms get worse. The coping mechanism that I've always turned to during flares is just to remember that it is cyclical, that it will improve, and that I have to be optimistic. For the most part, I have an ideal and I do the best I can to work toward it. The hardest part of living with ulcerative colitis is the uncertainty of it. I think initially I felt like I was the only person who had the disease, and that was more a function of not having known much about it before. What would have really helped me in the early stages of the disease would have been speaking to someone with the same disease who was about 10-15 years ahead of me, and seeing that person, their life, their accomplishments as an example of all the things that can happen in spite of being sick, in spite of having limitations. Because that's what I really needed at that time, was just the hope that even though my life was about to change because of this disease, it didn't mean that it was over. The feelings, the bonds, the friendships you make with people going through the same thing are very real. If ulcerative colitis is a problem, it is one of many problems that I'm going to encounter in my life. And learning how to deal with that problem will ultimately allow me to deal with everything.